Hey everyone, Rho here. Today I'm asking the question, just who is the most underappreciated of the Traitor Legions? General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we are discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay. Now for a while now, I've found myself being drawn into the dark aura of the Traitor Legions, perhaps even more now than ever before. Maybe in deciding which Traitor Legion is truly for me, or maybe I'm just hearing those dark whispers in my head late at night. Only Tzeentch himself truly knows. But in really looking at the Traitor Legions, it feels to me that there's quite a big disparity between some of their reputations. So which legion is really drawing the short end of the stick? Well, let's start with the poster boys of darkness, which no isn't the name of some kind of 80s rock band, but the forces of Abaddon himself, the Black Legion. Now, I would be incredibly surprised if anyone feels these guys are the most underappreciated or undervalued, as they are by far and away the most spotlighted of all the Traitor Legions. The one-time Lunar Wolves and Sons of Horus were the legion of the infamous Horus Lupercal himself, and thus led the way through not only the Great Crusade, but the resultant Horus heresy after. And while they may have suffered greatly in the Wars of the Eye of Terror after that, it really served only to further their reputation, as Abaddon brought the Legion back from its knees, renaming it the Black Legion, and dominating their way back to the top of the pecking order. And if that wasn't enough, he reignited the long war against the Imperium and launched 13 Black Crusades of war against them, ultimately achieving the greatest victory of, well, any enemy of the Imperium, and ripped the galaxy in half by shattering the Cadian Gate. Abaddon is the unopposed War Master of Chaos. His legion have drawn in marines from all other traitor kin and beyond. To a point now they are rumoured to tally numbers vastly outnumbering any of their brethren, and they rightly remain the face of the Chaos Space Marines. Now maybe in listing their accomplishments, you could say they are underappreciated, because they really deserve more respect. That in truth it's Abaddon and his Black Legion alone that have actually had any measure of success. And not just success, but unbelievable success at that. For me, while that point does actually ring quite true, I'm not sure I could say he or his legion are actually underappreciated, especially compared to some of his kin. But I'm interested to see what you guys think here. Next we have the Death Guard, Sons of Mortarion. Now when we had our War of Traitor Legions a few months ago, it was actually the Death Guard who came out with the victory, and that was according to your votes. And well, indeed, why not? Because Mortarion and his sons have perhaps been the most active Traitor Legion since the defeat at Terra. His list of campaigns against the Imperium, when not engaged in the Great Game, are fairly extensive. His legion has retained its structure almost completely, save for Typhus and his allowances. And not only that, but it has actually swelled in size as well. And it was Mortarion and the Death Guard who were the first Traitor Legion to truly claim a large portion of territory within the material universe for their patron. something envied so much by the fellow gods of chaos that it resulted in the invasion of the Scourge Stars. So with all that in mind, I personally find it hard to call the Death Guard underappreciated. At least they're not by me at any rate. You only have to look at their entirely recent range of models for the tabletop to possibly add further credence to their popularity. Now, perhaps one reason the Death Guard could be said to be underappreciated is that while Mortarion has had his measure of success, it has largely been off camera, so to speak. For all his efforts against a certain Primarch in the Siege of Terror, and his brother Guilliman during the Plague Wars, he does ultimately lose. But I'm not sure these situations are enough to warrant a decline in reputation for him or his Legion. So honestly, alongside the Black Legion, I'd probably put these guys right up there. Next we have the Emperor's Children, and right from the bat, I've got to be honest here, I do feel these guys are underappreciated. Their Primarch, as we know, is the Phoenician Fulgrim, the guy obsessed with perfection, and thus his Legion as well. This is one of the very few Primarchs who can categorically say he has killed a fellow Primarch. No rumours or doubts about it. He went toe to toe with his brother Ferrus Manus and decapitated him in one fell stroke, demonic possession or not. Now admittedly after that their efforts during the heresy did go out the window somewhat, so their reputation is somewhat of a mixed bag. Since the days of the heresy, the Emperor's Children have really just been a run-of-the-mill Traitor Legion, ultimately coming out on the losing end of the Traitor War within the Eye as not much more than fractured warbands. So it feels to me like they simply don't have the gravitas of a Black Legion or Death Guard, and thus maybe you could say are underappreciated. I mean, let's be real here, not only has Fulgrim taken out Ferrus Manus for one, but he technically also killed Guilliman as well, slicing his throat with his poisoned blade. So let's place some real respect on Fulgrim's name. Yes, maybe the Emperor's Children haven't been as active as some of their brother legions. However, we could really say that's more due to temptation elsewhere than trying and failing. The Emperor's Children quite simply haven't been as interested in the war against the Imperium ever since they were dedicated to the god of excess. And it feels to me that that lack of action has perhaps caused them to be slept on somewhat in terms of lethality compared to their kin. Maybe it should be said they simply haven't tried. At least not truly. For all the Legion's apparent shattering, we have seen before that Fulgrim can summon all his sons together with a single shout that echoes throughout the warp. And should he summon his sons together once more, I tend to think they could be a real problem for whoever they decide to take on. Maybe I'm a little biased here, because I've been waiting on that Emperor's Children release and a new Fulgrim model for what feels like forever. But it does feel to me that the Emperor's Children are definitely in the running for most underappreciated or undervalued. Next up we have the Alpha Legion. Are they loyal or are they traitors? Who really knows? Well, me. They are nothing but a bunch of traitorous heretics, case closed. But are they a bunch of underappreciated heretics? Now that is the question. The Alpha Legion are, as ever with the Alpha Legion, a hard one to judge, because the true extent of their actions is not really known. If we have to take a realistic look at their record, I'd have to say no, they are not undervalued, because they simply haven't done enough. They don't lead large grand campaigns, more seeding discord behind the scenes. However, one real mark of credit for the Legion is that these guys are one of the few legions that didn't simply run for the Eye of Terror after the siege. They instead remained within the Imperium, and that takes a huge level of not only strategic cunning, but a fair amount of courage as well. With the entire Imperium blazing for vengeance, the Alpha Legion remained within. They remain there still to this day, some 10,000 years later, which for all we know, could still have one of their Primarchs secretly leading the way. Now, one thing against the Alpha Legion is they have fallen into scattered warbands largely operating to their own accord. And yes, the argument could be made that that's exactly what the Alpha Legion wants us to think. However, I think the evidence from the novels we have seen so far largely points to this being true, at least for the time being. So, are the Alpha Legion underappreciated? To me, I'm leaning towards not so much. I think they get quite a lot of respect for the actions they carry out, and the ongoing rumours that their Primarchs each are still alive could be said to be good evidence of that. The Hydra will truly never die. On to the Night Lords. Now, if anything, I've always felt the Night Lords are actually hugely respected and quite popular. In large part thanks to ADB's amazing Night Lords trilogy, no doubt. This set of novels gave the Legion such an amazing sense of character and savageness. I mean, we've seen that character continue into the Horus Heresy series, evoked most brilliantly by Sevatar and Conrad Kurz both. During the Heresy, we saw the Night Lords engage in a full-on Legion war against their Dark Angel cousins, and actually they managed to keep them at a stalemate for many years amidst the void, only really being caught when their Primarch chose to speak to his brother El Johnson in person, which began the decline in their fortunes. While their tactics of terror could be said to be vastly different from the bulk of their legionary cousins, I think in truth their level of success could also have been a lot greater had their Primarch not had such an obsession with his own death. Just think what this legion could have done had Kurz actually loved and led it completely. And while I could be wrong, I personally think most people look at the Night Lords the same way, and so for me, I don't think I'd put them in the running for most underappreciated legion. Next up we have the Iron Warriors. Oh boy, you want to talk about underappreciated? We just may have the legion who cry that to sleep at night. Let's be real here, the tale of Perturabo's fall into being a traitor is led solely down the path of being underappreciated. Or maybe more accurately, feeling like he's underappreciated. We've spoke a lot about Perturabo's character in the past, and I certainly don't feel like he was underappreciated. Well, in the slightest. The Emperor called him his Lord of Iron for a reason. However, regardless of the Primarch's feelings, are the Iron Warriors underappreciated in the larger sense? The Primarch himself is largely responsible for the success of the traitors at the Siege of Terror. While Rogel Dawn did a masterful job of holding back the tide as long as he did, the argument could be made without Perturabo's mind leading the assault, the traitors may well have never breached the walls at all. And perhaps one of Horus's biggest mistakes was removing his brother from the position when he did, losing a vast portion of his entire legion in that same moment. Perturabo could even be said to have proved that error in his dismantling of the Imperial Fists in the following Iron Cage incident, a feat that most certainly deserves some props. And while since then the Iron Warriors have certainly not had the same level of success as, say, the Black Legion, again, maybe he just hasn't tried. Perturabo himself has spent millennia studying and undermining the defences of Segmentum Obscurus, which paved the way for a great deal of success after the Great Rift's explosion. So take that how you will. One thing, however, that does go against the Iron Warriors is their loss in the War for Rust and Ruin against Mortarion and the Death Guard. That is a categorical loss no way you look at it. I for one though most certainly expect Perturabo to avenge this defeat sooner rather than later. So are the Iron Warriors one of the most underappreciated traitor legions? Possibly. Honestly, if it wasn't for the loss in the War of Rust and Ruin, I may well be saying yes. But coming off that fresh defeat, I find it hard to say they are definitely the most underappreciated. Moving on, we have the World Eaters. Are they underappreciated? Well, it's hard to say. One of the most feared, most definitely. The Sons of Angron became an unstable mess the moment the Primarch was reunited with his sons. And well, the implantation of the Butcher's Nails was really the final nail in the coffin. Since that moment they became the Sons of Khorne in all but name. And well, we know that didn't take long to transpire anyway. The World Eaters are a fearsome foe. Unleashing them upon a world would lead to a level of carnage and savagery that really can't be matched by any other. And I think that perhaps that mindless savagery could really see this legion to being underappreciated, or maybe undervalued in the larger sense of the word. For yes, while it may be an assault short on tactics, my lord, it would take some stopping. Now, the Legion is completely shattered into warbands, yes, but that hasn't stopped them wreaking carnage across the Imperium, and they are still instinctively called to where their Primarch walks. Since the days of the Heresy, Angron has been one of the more active Primarchs, firstly with the Dominion of Fire, where he led a force of 50,000 Khorne Berserkers, massacring his way across the Imperium for over 2 centuries, and then of course the infamous War for Armageddon, where the Primarch was only banished by the efforts of over 100 Grey Knights, a battle in which only 13 survived. And we haven't even mentioned Kharn yet, who, after being responsible for the disintegration of the Legion largely by himself, has truly become an unstoppable force of destruction and slaughter. Kharn unleashes carnage wherever he appears in the galaxy, and he has ascended undoubtedly to the position of Khorne's champion. So are the World Eaters underappreciated? It's a hard one to say. Are they thought of on the same level as the Black Legion and Death Guard? I don't think they are. Of course you guys could prove me wrong here. Maybe the question is, should they be? And if not, does that make them undervalued? It's an interesting question to consider, and when I think about it, it does make me think that maybe the World Eaters are underappreciated. Next up we have the Thousand Sons, the sons of Magnus. Magnus, who did everything wrong. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Now Magnus is unequivocally, after his father, the most powerful sorcerer in the galaxy. and as such deserves major respect right there. And that's not even getting started on his sons, who are such skilled psykers in their own right, they possibly are only matched by the Eldari themselves. Magnus for his part has had large levels of success since the days of the heresy, managing to bring the planet of the sorcerers out of the Eye of Terror and into the material world, which is no mean feat by any standards. His legion, however, as we know, is truly a shell of its former self, largely thanks to the actions of a certain Ahriman, and as such only the sorcerers of the legion retain their personality. However, does this then give reason to say the Thousand Sons are underappreciated? Let's be honest, Magnus has achieved some fairly substantial achievements, and he's managed to do that with most of his legion being, for want of a better expression, mind-wiped. However, I feel like Magnus gets his fair share of props for what he has achieved. Now, just what could he have achieved if the rubric had been reversed? Now that is definitely a thought-provoking question. Finally, we have the Word-Bearers, the Sons of Lorgar, the legion truly responsible for the heresy itself. Maybe that alone should make the Word-Bearers undervalued. But in truth, the Word-Bearers' accomplishments are quite something. Firstly, their legion is held firmly intact. Now, while yes, it does balance on the edge of civil war with Lorgar's absence, that civil war has as of yet not broken out, and thus the legion remains whole. And that is doubly important considering its size. The Word-Bearers were second only to the Ultramarines themselves during the Great Crusade, in terms of size, and with Lorgar refusing to participate in the Siege of Terror, most of his own legion was not even present, meaning the Word-Bearers suffered far fewer losses, and as a result, number one of the largest traitor legions. Secondly, their zeal and use of faith has meant they are experts at exploiting the Imperium's own faith and Imperial creed. Countless uprisings of chaos cults have come from the manipulations of the Word-Bearers. And considering the dark truth of the Ecclesiarchy's founding, that places the Word-Bearers as perhaps the most serious threat to the Imperium in the very near future. They are also devoted to the Chaos Pantheon as a whole, meaning they aren't drawn into the bitter wars between the gods. They aren't mere pawns within the great game, and as such are able to receive the boons and gifts of the dark gods, but not suffer the burdens that come with it, aside from the obvious demonic corruption. And this, I feel, is a particular strength for the Word-Bearers Legion, and one that perhaps goes too often overlooked. They don't suffer being dragged into the gods' war, such as say maybe the Death Guard do, and yet they embrace the gods' gifts far more than say the Black Legion do as well. Now undoubtedly their Primarch's isolation and inaction for the past 10,000 years does cost them in terms of say a record of action. So it's hard not to say they could have and should have done more against the Imperium so far. Though with the Urizen rumoured to be leading his crusade against the Imperium now, maybe it was all boiling to this moment. As always guys, what do you think? Who do you think is the most underappreciated or undervalued Traitor Legion? It's definitely a hard one to say. For me, not having any particular bias to one Traitor Legion, I think I'm leaning towards maybe saying the Word-Bearers, particularly with the current climate within the galaxy. I really feel the time to shine for the Word-Bearers is coming now. But as always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Which Traitor Legion do you think is the most undervalued? Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.